Hey, Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with another book/audiobook review. This time looking at The High Republic, The Rising Storm, written by Kevin Scott and narrated by the wonderful Mark Thompson. Once again, just kind of a little bit of backstory here. When it came to The High Republic, all the advertising came out. I had zero interest. The pictures looked as bland as could be. The bios told me nothing. Nothing about it interested me. But my buddy Extra Techy from Extra Star Wars, he was all in because he wanted, it was kind of a new universe. He had missed the boat on the EU before, and so he was looking forward to getting into something starting from the beginning, fresh start, and really consuming it all. I would say in the same way I was about the Time Lord Victorious arc. Like, it was like this complete multi-platform thing across all these different stuff, and I just ate it all up. So he really was getting in it, and he kind of thought, what, in 5 years when they start making movies or whatever based on this, after it becomes popular, this content he's doing good. But he did the first book of the Thrawn Trilogy, and he wasn't impressed. He wasn't going to go on, and so I made a challenge to him that I said, hey, you cannot judge it by the Thrawn Trilogy is a trilogy. It is that's just the beginning setup. Then you have the middle where it kind of gets to the darkest moment, and then the end when they win the day, just like with any other thing. So I said, hey, I will review the 3 High Republic books of your choice if you do that. Now, he had a little bit of a head start on me, and truth be told, I listened to this 3 months ago. And stuff was just crazy. I couldn't find the time to record or write notes or do anything like that. And then I finally had time to record now. And I was like, I'm going to be so vague. I got to re-listen. So I just went and re-listened to it. And now we're going to give our thoughts. And so I will say that I've so far been pleasantly surprised. The first book was written by somebody who I didn't know, and I thought it was a really good setup, although to me it was a lot of moments of very heroic Jedi. And I was very surprised by that, because everything in it was bland, marketing, nothing really, but like there was a lot of sacrificing, a lot of major efforts, lots of use of the Force in interesting ways. And if people have a problem with that, but praise the EU, by the end of the EU run, Luke could just do about anything with the Force. Like, he was pulling ships out of black holes. Like, Luke was OP at the end of the EU. Around the time of when the sequel trilogy happened, yeah, Luke was super OP. So with this, that was surprised me. However, there was way too many characters, like blending all the plots together. Like, they wasn't making. It wasn't until the end of the book that I started to care about a few of them. And it's interesting because some of those ones, like that was what I was most interested in this book, didn't really come into play till the end of the book. Like Grey Cloud, I wanted to know what happened. But I will say that I cared about a lot more characters in this, and I tried to go through and write down the names of most of the characters that I care about so I could talk about them. But just because I didn't want to get it so that I had to listen to it a third time because I'd let too much time. I don't have as extensive notes as I wanted, but I think I've got a pretty good set of notes to talk about more about the characters, and we will get into spoilers when I get into that section. But right now we're keeping it spoiler free. But just kind of another thing, like the first author, didn't really know his work. The second author, Kevin Scott, I am familiar with a little bit of his work. He is a decent Star Wars writer, which I say begrudgingly, because he's not a decent person to represent the company to the fandom, because he routinely attacks fans online. And I put that because people are quick to say, well, those aren't fans. Those are people who just want to hate. They're still fans. That's why they're angry. That's why they're upset. It's because they're fans. And, well, I don't always agree with the mentality of always being upset. I get pretty salty about certain things, too. So, you know, I don't try to take away their fan card just because they're upset at stuff. Just like I don't try to take away the fan card from people who like things that I'm like, how can you be a fan and be cool with this? You must not really get what the property's about. Both sides do that. I don't do that. The fact that people are podcasting, making YouTube videos, passionately debating this stuff online, that makes them a fan. And it's one thing when it's us fighting each other, but when it's a writer or a director or an actor or somebody who's involved in, like, is specifically going out and attacking fans, it is not a good look. And it doesn't put me there. But I separate that from that. So I come into this, I've read a little bit of Kevin Scott's stuff from before, and admittedly, like, he's come up with some good stuff. But I haven't read a lot just because, like, that kind of turned me off. I was, seeing the way he generally writes off people with opinions similar to mine as just non-fans, minority, should be ignored, and says some pretty nasty stuff about it, and really has just turned me off to delving into his books. But I have no problem separating the writer from the work. I've never, people try to go in now and go retrospectively from, like, books written 50, 60, hundreds of years ago, were they this leaning or that leaning, or were they believe in this or they believe in that, and try to discredit work of, like, some really big people. And I've always been baffled by that. But as far as, I'm going to say overall, my rating of this book is it's a good read. There was something at the end that I wasn't a fan of. It kind of, and I got to get into the next book, which is by Claudia Gray, someone who I really like her work, with a few caveats of, she's the one that brings some more adult themes into these books that I don't really feel add much to Star Wars and the need. And I believe that's where the Rock character, because for all the, I'm going to say this, I am 2 books in, and that Rock pilot or whatever that everybody was freaking out over, that, I mean, I was there, like, I laughed. I was like, they put out, like, a trading card, like, digital trading card of him, and it's just a stone. I can't even think of his name right now, but it was just like, and they were talking about the stones, like, sex life or whatever, and I was just like, this is ludicrous, this is dumb. And I'm 2 books in, and everybody talks about that, like, to nauseum. This character hasn't shown up yet, and I know that it's in the book, so maybe it's in the there's also a series of, like teen novels that are much more lighter fare that I don't plan on going into, partly because it's not part of this bet, and I just not, and I also know there's comics, so maybe it's in the comics, but I really thought it was in this, so maybe it's in Claudia Gray's book. But if this is like a character that appears for a chapter or two, I'm going to laugh. Because, one, they shot themselves in the foot with that. But, I mean, that is like, I had issues with She-Hulk, but the whole She-Hulk twerking was like an after credit scene to one thing that's like done in private in her office with it, but that like became what the entire internet made about that show. Like that was the focus of everyone. Oh yeah, we got She-Hulk. Like they made it this huge thing, and it's like less than 30 seconds after credit scene done in her private office. Like she's not out in public doing that or something. Like, but it just became what everybody obsessed about when talking about that show. And I just thought that funny because so many people hadn't even watched the show and they made a big deal about it. And here I've done that. I've made a big deal about this rock thing and hype. He's not in there. So overall, except for the very end where I had some issues, I really like this book. So good job, Kevin Scott. Mark Thompson, as always, delivers a good thing. This book has an exciting plot. It has does a much better job of making me follow these characters. Now, some of that might be because I had them. Now, when I went to go get the names of all the characters, at a certain point I was like, I got to record this video. There's still like 60 named characters in this book. That's too many. That's too many. Everybody's got a friend, an assistant, an aide, and they all have names. If I had a note to Wikipedia, I would say, even though it's not like when you have a bunch of Jedi appear in Starfighters and like they just throw out a name once and that Jedi does something in one chapter for one, like differentiate those characters out. Like this is the main cast. These are the characters that play a significant role in the story, and these are the other characters that were there, because it is like really hard when you're just looking at a sea of names. You're going, oh, what's the guy that did this? So there's going to be a few that I'm not going to mention that. So overall, I'm going to say positive. This is not the pansy High Republic that the advertisement led me to believe. It had good story. It had good, that everything about it, I'm going to say good. And it's interesting. It makes me interested in what's coming next. So let's go into spoilers.
Spoilers.
Okay, so for the spoilers, we're going to go through some of the things. First, the Jedi Elzar Mann. Elzar Mann, and I'm going to go by characters and just talk about there throughout the book. So Elzar Mann has a situation where he's having nightmares. He knows something bad is coming, but he's known as a Jedi who invents new solutions to complicated problems. So he's going to go out and he's going to fix this. But he's kind of doing it on his own, doing that, trying to take destiny into his own hands. It goes kind of poorly for him, because just when he finally kind of thinks that everything is going to be okay, and it all goes wrong. And he kind of starts to let himself have a little bit of a romantic attachment to the person who's planning this big festival. And that's kind of the center of the whole book, is there's going to be this big festival in the Outer Rim to bring the Republic, the Outer Rim, and some of the other factions that haven't joined the Republic, like the Togrutas and the Mon Calamaris and stuff like that, to get them to come and have this big fair and try to entice new allies, try to show that despite all the stuff the Nihil did in the last book, that the Republic is strong and they are committed to the Outer Rim. And so this one individual, she's setting it up, and so Elzar Mann has a little bit of a romantic thing, but when everything goes wrong, he kind of pulls, is it Vopad? The whatever Mace Windu does, where it's like he uses the dark side to channel for right. He goes full bore. Like there is a moment where he's like trying to be the good Jedi. He's doing this, he's doing that, and like everything is failing for him. The Nihil are just basically coming in with ships and just shooting up this fair, releasing all the zoo animals, because this fair has like representations of all the planets of the Republic done as like islands where they, it's floating little biomes like full of a zoo with like predators and different things. So they're releasing the predators. They're doing all this stuff is happening, and he fails to save, and like it just like hits him. And he's like, no more. And he is like just lets out with the Force and does a huge amount of destruction. Now, I'm almost imagining he's using Force lightning. Now, they didn't describe it as that, but like he's saying like he's shot out with the, and he's taking ships down. And he just like this burst of negative energy fueled force. And he knows he goes too far. And that's going to bring us into the next character that I really liked in this, which was Tyork. And so Tyork is someone who has left the Jedi Order as a Padawan. So they never became a Jedi Knight, so they're not part of the Fallen. They're someone who left before they progressed. And they have limited training, but has a bit of a chip on their shoulder about the Jedi Order. Now we see her start out, she's basically become a monster killer for hire. She uses her abilities in the Force and lightsaber to go out, do basically kind of, she's like Mando, she does the mission of the week type thing, but she's, you got a village that's being attacked by some monster. She comes out, she kills the monster. That's her thing. We start her with she's dealing with the Danger plants. These are, I think, what's going on in the comics, but it's another big, so like the Nihil's this big problem, but there's also this thing, I think it's the main focus of the comics, but these Dangir plant things that are eating people and like taking over planets and growing, and the Jedi are trying to combat, and it's so serious that they're teaming up with the Hutts to try to eradicate this threat. So, she's saving a village, she's killing these off, but she's pretty much broke. And so she gets taken in this job as a bodyguard, and it's shady as can be, and it's taking her to there, and if she didn't really need the money to repair her ship, she wouldn't do it, because it was like going to be around Jedi, this person's kind of shady, and they're wanting to go there to present this new weapon. And this weapon can turn off all energy-based weapons. So basically taking it back to swords and bows and arrows, which is an advantage if you knew that was going to happen when suddenly blasters and lightsabers wouldn't work, if you had like regular bullet guns and, swords and stuff, and prepared for it. It would be a big tide changer. But all like energy-based weaponry silence. But it uses a banned chemical that is very deadly, bad radiation. And so she brings there, and she's the guard, and when this one goes to there, she does the display, and she's doing it to the senator, who is very opposed to the fair that's going on, very opposed to the chancellor and all that the chancellor's doing, because he feels the Republic should have an army. And I wish I knew this person's name. I was trying to find it. I never got it. I like this character. He's presented as kind of like the slimy politician, but he's not. He has a point. He really feels that the Republic should have a military, and it shouldn't just be formed in a time of crisis. There should be a military there, ready and willing to handle problems, and it shouldn't be the Jedi. The Jedi should not be viewed and used as a military for the Republic. They should be an assistant, a supplement to that, but the government should have a way of enforcing law and order. But it's the Republic at this point in some ways operates like the United States, and in other ways it operates like the UN. And so it doesn't have a military force of its own. It doesn't really have a lot of teeth. kind of like the UN, but at the same time, it has a chancellor, and it makes laws and decrees, and is collecting taxes from everyone, which the UN doesn't do. That's more like the United States, different from each state has their own laws. Just kind of a weird way that they show the High Republic era. But anyways, he immediately is like, why are you bringing... This is a bad and horrible thing. This is a banned substance. It's illegal. It would defeat the Jedi, and that's a bad thing. And they're like, but you're against the Jedi. Why wouldn't you want this? He's like, I'm not against the Jedi. I'm for the fact that instead of having this grandiose fair that puts everybody in danger, that we should use that money to have our own army, to police, and to put an end to the Nihil threat, and to just provide security. He wants him more like a police force. And he says, that's what I'm for. You're wanting to thinking I'm going to be on board for illegal things, that I want the Jedi Order to go down. No, he's like, I'm a good guy. I'm not a bad guy. Just because I have a political view different than a lot of what are the heroes of the book, he's not a bad guy. And I really liked that messaging. Because in this era of everything, like, this is totally supposed to be the guy that is the slimy politician. But we find out he's not slimy. He's not a monster. He's a good person who cares about specific things, that puts him at odds with some of the other people who care about other specific things. It's just differences on that. And I actually really like that. That is the last thing I would have expected from the High Republic. When you look at that whiteboard and you look at all the things that they're talking about, diversity, this, that, like all the buzzwords, this character, if anything, I would say he'd represent the conservative side. The fact that he's shown in that light, and they make him not to be the monster, like, I would have thought from the way they were growing, the way they were portraying that you know, everybody gets all obsessed with things. He's a good character. But anyways, this causes Elzar Mann to step in, and then Tyork pulls out her lightsaber, and she almost kills him. And a couple other Jedi are assisting, and they defeat her, and she's going to get arrested. And, you know, they're just kind of having back. She's just doing her job, right? But her job, she picked the wrong one thing, but she's like, a contract is a contract, I do it. So now she's stuck in prison, and Elzar Mann has her lightsaber. Now, flash forward to the whole thing. Elzar Mann, like, goes crazy, blasts all that out. Well, she's gotten out of prison in all the chaos, and she's coming for him. She wants her lightsaber back. And she gets there, and they kind of have a little standoff, and he's like, look, you can't do this. This is not the way. And he's like, not the way. I just saw what you did. And I may not be a Jedi, but I know that that's not wrong. That you're not supposed to do that. And he says, you're right. He says, I need your help. There's no one, all the Jedi are occupied. I need somebody to ground me, to keep me in check, because I just went the wrong way. So I need you to be my conscience. He's asking the person who left the order, who before he imprisoned, he thinks, I need you to be my conscience, keep me on the straight and narrow. And she's like, what? Are you crazy? So I really like Ty. She reminds me a lot of Mara Jade. In the early things, like with Luke, like first she wants to kill Luke and stuff like that, but there's this constant thing where like Leia and Luke are constantly pushing Mara Jade to do good. Like, you're the only one that can help with us. We need you with this. And she's like, I'm out for my own thing. I do trade. I do this, that. Tyork is very much a Mary Jade type character. And I really love her for that. And so then they team and they do a Vulcan mind meld with Jedi powers. Which is weird because I've never seen it described that way. But like they share intimate thoughts and stuff. Like they join minds to create the harmony or whatever. And it's embarrassing for both of them. And they just go and they kick butt. It's amazing. They're great. They're heroic. They end up like riding dragons or something around and defeating Nihil, and it's just great and amazing and all sorts of action. So those two characters really liked. Okay, now associated with that, we talked about we had the person who like set up the fair, and then we had the chancellor and her motivations. She's really, she wants to make a statement. She wants that, and it goes horribly wrong. The exact opposite statement is made. However, it accomplishes her purpose. She is almost killed off in this. But they also had a really interesting character that was like the head of state of the Togrutas, which I think it was like the head huntress or something like that. And it's unique because they're setting up that, hey, the Togrutas, they respect the Jedi, but they do not like the Republic. Because of some early bad dealings. And it is very Native American-like, which is interesting because that's also kind of what we saw in the Ahsoka episode of Tales of the Jedi. It's like, oh, they have droids and stuff, but they live simple. They have a lot of tribal rituals. And so they had that, like, the Republic came in and, like, set foot on their land and did things, and they offended them. And so there's kind of bad blood. But it's actually the fact that the Chancellor and the head of the Togrutas are both out there. They got their personal guard. They got Jedi. And instead of going, get us into the safest place and forget about everybody, we're the heads of state, both of them make commands to pick up, there's people hurt over there, we're going to go over there, we're going to get them first. And every time, like, along the way, when the Jedi's like, there's people I have to, they're like, go. And they're like, head captains are like, no, but we must protect you. We must get, and she's like, no, you will assist the Jedi. We are going to run towards danger, save these people on our way, not just take the safest route. We're going to pick up people, and lots of heroics. And then after, the Chancellor is left almost for dead. That was, the whole Nihil thing was they were going to kill the Chancellor, and they thought they did. And then once everything's done, and the Togruta backup comes, and all that stuff, and the Jedi backup comes, but once that's done, the Togrutas kind of go off on their own. And it's like, ooh, do they have bad blood? Did this ruin it? And then they give all the information they gathered about the Nihil and about the attack. And they're like, no, not everybody in my government agrees, but hey, I saw you in action as a Chancellor, and we're kindred spirits. You cared about the people, not just about yourself. And that is what Togrutas are all about. And I think we are going to work united against the Nihil, and I think this could be the beginning of us becoming part of the Republic, basically, is what she says. And so that was really interesting. That was a nice story. Not nice enough that I remembered any of their names, but it was a good story. Next, we are going to talk about the villains, the Nihil, and Marchion Ro. Yes, Marchion Ro, head of the Nihil Podcast Network. I mean, no. I do find it funny that Ro is the name of, like, the ultimate, like, just scum evil in these books. Especially seeing as, Kevin Scott has said some choice words about some of the people in the Red 5 Network before that it just kind of made me laugh. But he's going off on this mission, and he takes Udi, some bird person, and I like this because his species is sensitive in the Force, and it reminds me of that episode of Clone Wars that had, like, Mace Windu and Jar Jar Binks, which was, like, the only episode with Jar Jar Binks that I actually enjoyed in the Clone Wars, because it was this species that was Force sensitive that don't like the Jedi because the Jedi try to take their kids, but, like, a whole species is Force sensitive, but they're not Force sensitive to the same extreme that the Jedi are, and so they're kind of just a little bit different here, and I like them. I think they're interesting. I like when they do species like that. Kind of giving, like, other factions, not just Sith and Jedi, but in an idea that the Force is uniting everybody. There's going to be some people that can do that. Man, earpiece is just not staying. But anyways, they go on this thing. They meet this old woman on this planet, and they go through this temple where he's going to go worship. But he's really seeking out some sort of weapon. And there's a monster there, and they fight the monster. And in the end, he dies. And it almost seems like it's part of Ro's plan for him to die. Like he needed to be there to be the sacrifice or the guinea pig or something like that. It was interesting. But Ro's the one that walks away with the power, with all that. And he gets back, and I'm not going to find out. The Nihil are set up where you have the eye, which is what Marcion Ro is. And he's kind of like this figurehead, but he's not supposed to really have power. Like he's the ultimate leader, but just like the president of the United States, you have like Congress and the Senate and all that stuff. He's supposed to have these 3 Tempest runners who basically are the real ones calling the shots. And he's basically the tiebreaker. So, there's 4 votes, and if it's a tie, it goes the way of the eye. But so he holds a little more weight than they do, but he actually doesn't. Part of the rule is he doesn't have his own power, his own army. And he's kind of breaking that rule a little bit, collecting a few people for himself. But while he was gone, he told them to lay low. He says, we are going to go make a big splash, so you need to make sure that the High Republic thinks they beat us. I think that in the last book at the end, like they beat one of the Tempest runners, so make them think that that's all we were. Go, just do low stuff. Be in waiting so they're not on high alert. So they're foolish and they open themselves up to a big attack. But Pam Ada gets tired of waiting. And he's like, Marcion Ro does the main thing. And he's like this big, bulky, like super tough skin. He's your Drax type character. He's just like super strong. And he's like, nah, I'm not waiting. And he goes and he attacks it, and it fails miserably because a couple extra Jedi happen to be there. And a couple of other things that like make it all go wet. So when Marcion Ro gets back, he is like putting him in his place. And Pamian is like, nah, I'm bigger than you. And he grabs Marcion Ro's helmet and it like electrocutes him. Almost to the point where he nearly dies. And so we got the 3rd new Tempest runner, which I don't know, he's just kind of like this little snivelly guy, and he's built himself a mech suit so that he can be bigger than Pam, because Pam is like big and imposing. And the other one, which is ORD, who is I believe a Twi'lek, but she's like super like assassin skills. So, he's trying to like be impressive, and Laura D's like, I can't get it out. You've got to save him because your mech suit. He can't, and so he saves him. And Ro seems like, oh, they saved him. I really thought the other 2 would be glad to see him die, is what he's thinking to himself. But he's like, that's okay. And he's just like part of the group again. But Pam's like, I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to keep going after Ro. I'm going to keep challenging him. And inevitably, Ro poisons him. But here's the thing. Laura D, she's in charge of, when they do this big attack, Pam's doing this guy. The 3rd guy, like, invents stuff to add to his thing. But he doesn't really have the armies yet because... he's taking the place of the guy that like got all his troops killed. So, he doesn't have like the impressive forces, but he's doing that with like tech whiz and stuff like that he added some new weapon of scab droids. But, Laura D's doing the ground troops, and Pam is like, you know what? The Jedi seem to be doing, let's just start shooting missiles at the ground. Laura D's like nearly getting killed because of all this. And so she's holding a grudge. So what's interesting though is Pam has like this big thing. He challenges Ro, hey, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do next. And Laura D step up and agrees. And then Ro says, okay, well, then what next? This or that or that? What's your next target? Are you going to war? We are bandits. We are not going to wage a war against the Republic. So if you're going to keep attacking the Republic, like our whole purpose of this was to make a statement. But if you're going to go, you're going to need to fight a war because all these planets are going to militarize and come after us. Is that what you want? And so then Pam is like, I've had enough. And sure enough, Marcy Monroe poisons Pam. But Lorna D gives him the antidote. However, she once again, just like we saw the last Tempest Runner, she convinces him that she's on his side, sends him to go attack this, but then quietly behind his back, like, convinces most of his men not to go with him, and then her people don't go, and so he shows up. It gets leaked to the Jedi. It's a trap, and the Jedi just demolish him, and that's the end of him. So that's kind of, but Lorna D's still not sure whether to accept Ro or not, and Ro's not sure whether to accept Lorna D or not. But it just kind of, that's where that goes. Now for the third plot point. And that starts with Bel Zettifar. So Bel Zettifar, he was the Padawan, and we saw him in the last one, like they were trying to save this family, and then his master, Lord Greycloud, tries to rescue and then gets captured by the Nihil, by Marcia Monroe. And Bel Zettifar is cutting himself off from the Force. He doesn't want to accept that his master's dead. He's just lost all the heart to be a Jedi. But stuff starts going down and he realizes, I got to reach out to the Force, and he is just heroic. He's saving the Chancellor's son and all these different ones, and just pure, like, there's a scene where, like, they're in a hangar on a ship that's underground, and they're trying to get in another ship to go out, and he's like, hey, I gotta get outside. I'm gonna have to use the Force to open the doors, and then I'm gonna have to, like, hang on to the outside of the ship from the outside to get alive. I'm gonna use the Force. Constantly, like, just heroics, constantly putting himself in danger. Really like this kid. Loden Greycloud is going through the most horrible torture by Marcion Rowe. He's had his Leku, because he's also not a Togruta, I just mentioned it a little bit, but the same as Lorna D. He's got those cut off, and his eyes are been something mounted on him to force it so he can't close his eyes, and he's nonstop being given stimulant so he can never sleep. And he's having to watch other people be tortured. Like, this is the ultimate torture for a Jedi. Like, he can't go to sleep. He has to watch other people be tortured and slowly die in front of him. And he can't close his eyes. He can't get a respite. And they're also playing what, like, they describe like heavy metal music just to really mess with this guy. And there's the lady who's providing the paths, the old lady that provides the paths for him. She's Force sensitive, and she's like talking to him, and she's like, "Are you real?" He's like, "I don't know. Are you real? I don't know who's real." He's like, he's going insane. But when they get to the last battle, Bel Zettifar, Ty York, and his new master are all there, and he realizes that Loden Greycloud, the legendary Loden Greycloud, is not dead. They all thought he was dead. They wrote him off. And so, like, he's like on a mission. I gotta rescue him. And his presence there then gives Loden the last little bit of strength. Loden attacks Ro, and then Ro does an attack against him, and he's like skin and bones because he hasn't been being fed. And he falls off a cliff. He dodges it through the force, but then he's so weak he didn't realize he jumped off the cliff. But he gets saved by Bell. Like, I've got you, Master. So they go through all that, but then at the very end, Ro unleashes something. And I was really invested with Loden Greycalod. He was one of the few characters, him and Bell were like the two characters that really stuck with me in the last book. So I was really hoping that they would like follow up, like what's going on with him. And it wasn't until the end of the book. And he gets rescued. And then they kill him. I did not like that. And then they made Bell like just go traumatized into in a ball at the end. I did not like that. Teasing us that he's alive. Everybody's mourning him the whole time, but he's alive. He's alive. It's okay. And then at the end, Ro unleashes some like beast that desires Jedi, and it eats him. And it leaves Bell Zettifar like just like traumatized, almost comatose. That was a very downer moment to end the book, and I'm interested to see where it goes in the next book, but I was not happy about that. This is my favorite character from the last book. The main reason why I was excited to get into this book was to see what happens, how this character gets rescued, what goes on. They don't kill him off in the beginning of the book. They wait, they rescue him, and then they kill him. No. That annoyed me. That is my one negative takeaway from this book. So we've gone through all these different characters. Overall, I've bounced around the story. I'm haphazard. You should go listen to the book if you're interested in any of this. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of Jedi being Jedi. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's a good book. It's a good book. And don't let the fact that it's the High Republic and the cover of this book is awful advertising. And so I am glad that I made the deal with Sean from Extra Techy, Extra Star Wars, to review these books. I'm going to get into the next book now that I've finally done this review. And I'm going to look through some more EU books. I'm going to revisiting so that I can suggest some to Sean as good ones. And, you know, I'm glad that I did this. And, you know, it's interesting that even though I prefer the EU over the stuff now, it doesn't mean I can't enjoy some of this stuff. And I do like the High Republic, what they've done with these two books so far. So with that, I've rambled on long enough. Go check out Extra Star Wars and Extra Techy's channels. He's going to go way in depth, way better, more informed than me to catch all of this kind of stuff. And with that, I'll catch you in the next video.